Hi there, my name is Martin Benfield. I'm a GP trainer, and this video looks at the Educational Supervisors Report meetings, the ESR meetings. And what we're going to do is look at who is an educational supervisor, what is an ESR meeting, what's the point of them, and how do you prepare for them. So an educational supervisor is a GP trainer within the scheme that you are in, and they'll be allocated to you by your TPD on your training scheme. And they'll probably do that in maybe late August, early September. You don't have to have any early contact with them, especially if you're in a hospital post, but you will have a meeting with them in late November, the first ESR meeting. You'll probably have the same ES, educational supervisor, through all of ST1 and ST2. And if you go to that GP's practice as an ST3, then they will stay as your ES for the whole time. If, however, you're allocated in ST3 to a different practice, then the educational supervisor will probably switch to a trainer at that practice. Now, at the ESR meeting, you will have a chat with them about how things are going with your posts, how things are going with your e-portfolio. Have you been able to start doing some learning, aiming towards the exams later on in your training? They will review the evidence you provided in your ESR, check you're hitting targets for your requirements, and they'll finalise with you 3 PDPs that will then be done for the next ESR. Now, the ESR meetings take place every 6 months, and they take place in November and in May. Now, that will be every 6 months from November, but if you started in early August, it's not quite 4 months before the first ESR meeting. So the first ESR meeting is very much a practice meeting. Do your best with the e-portfolio, get some requirements done like the workplace-based assessments, get a few clinical case reviews done, try your best with the self-rating, but don't worry too much about it. At the first meeting, you can discuss how you did with the ES, and they'll give you advice on how you might be able to prepare better for the May ESR, with the May ESR being the real ESR. And the reason why I say that is that after the May ESR, in June, they'll have something called an ARCP panel. Now, you don't have anything involved with this. You just get your e-portfolio all up to scratch, make sure it's okay. And then in June, the panel will be 3 members of the deanery who will look at your e-portfolio, check you've got all the requirements, check your learning logs are reflective, they show evidence of improvement. And then if they're happy with it, they say, yes, this trainee is okay to be passed from ST1 into ST2. Okay, so that happens in June. The reason why we've got the May ESR, then June, is then it gives July potentially for any improvements to be made to then be able to go into ST2 for August. So that's why the timings are like that. So before the meeting, you will need to make sure you do a Form R. You make sure you have enough requirements on your ESR, on your e-portfolio. You do self-rating. You propose 3 PDPs as well. So the Form R is, you can get that from the ARCP website, and you fill it in and you upload it onto your e-portfolio. And it's kind of a probity thing. It looks at, you record the number of sick days and a few other bits of data on there. So that's got to be on there for your ESR meeting. Make sure you've got enough requirements if you can. So, for example, if you need 2 mini KEXs, try and get 2 mini KEXs as you can. If you can, get the right number of clinical case reviews. Don't worry too much about the 1st November ESR if you haven't got everything. As long as you're making an effort so you haven't got any zeros, that will be okay. But the main thing is you've got the right number for when you're in May. Your self-rating, if you go to ESR preparation on your e-portfolio, what you have to do is under each capability is you select your best 3 bits of evidence for each capability. Now, in the November one, you might not have 3 bits of evidence for each capability. And if you're less than full time, then you reduce down by whatever percentage. So if you're 60%, may aim for 2 bits of evidence. The evidence you use will mostly be the clinical case reviews. So you will select your, let's say under communication skills, you select your best 3 bits of evidence that link to communication skills. And when you go into ESR preparation, I would do it now if you can, click on the communication skills and you'll see all the evidence in your e-portfolio that links to that capability. And from that list, you select your best 3, which will usually be clinical case reviews. So you select the 3 which show you in the best light, show your best evidence of communication skills, and also be thinking about reflections. Do those clinical case reviews also show where you've identified a learning and you've done some learning, which shows you'll be a better doctor next time. Those are the things they're going to be looking for. So you select your best 3 bits of evidence, usually clinical case reviews. If you were to select something else like a workplace-based assessment, I would only do that if there was some text from the supervisor as extra evidence. So if you select communication skills because they've ticked meets expectation under communication skills, that isn't really good evidence. If, however, they've written this trainee showed really good communication skills in a difficult situation where they were able to explain to worried parents the possible diagnoses and the management plan that was put in place, something like that, that's great evidence that you did some good communication skills there. So if there's text, use a workplace-based assessment. Try not to use clinical supervisor's report evidence because that's kind of somebody else's evidence about you rather than something you've added to the portfolio. So generally clinical case reviews. And that's your self-rating. So you go through every capability, select your best 3 bits of evidence if you've got them. If you've got enough time, make sure there are no zeros for that November ESR. So you go through, you've got nothing at all for holistic care. Make sure you write a clinical case review and have holistic care in there so there's no zeros. With the PDPs, they've always got to be smart, and you don't do any PDPs before the ESR meeting. So the PDPs, you propose 3 PDPs in preparation for the meeting. At the meeting, you finalise the wordings of them, and they're to be done by the next ESR. So you don't have to do any PDPs before the ESR meeting. And you always make sure they're smart. So what we're looking for is they're relevant and realistic. Are they related to GP training in some way? They can be related to the next post you're about to do, or they might be unrelated to the next post. They might be just something that you think will improve your GP training, your ability to pass the next exam. So it needs to be relevant. It can't be mandatory. So it can't be a mandatory thing. If you have to do a QIA for the next ESR, you can't say you're going to do a QIA under a PDP because you've got to do that anyway. It's got to be something that's non-mandatory. It means relevant, non-mandatory. It has to be specific enough that you can identify something that you can do in that time frame. So you have to be able to finish it by the next ESR, and you have to be able to provide evidence that you've done it. So things like supporting documentation of your learning, or a clinical case review where you've used that information. So you have to be able to measure it. So you have to demonstrate you've done it in the time frame relevant to general practice. You propose them, ESR meeting, you finalise it, and you finalise what you're going to do. So those are the main things for the ESR.